Giving you the real from A to Z surrounding the Dallas Cowboys. News, updates, rumors, transactions, takes, and more. So strap up, Cowboys Nation, and start your day off with A to Z Sports. Live with Will Steele.
3, 2, 1.
Here we go. We back. Oh, yeah. Good morning, good people. Welcome to A to Z Sports Live. Streaming live on YouTube. We on Facebook. And, of course, I am your host, Will Skywalker Steele. Boom! What's happening, people? What's happening? Coming up today, we will pick up our State of the Unit series. Yes, sir. Talking about offensive tackles. Let me tell you why I think we are in a good and bit of a bad situation. There will be a lot of movement happening on today's show in regards to the bottom of the roster for offensive tackles. And eventually, at some point, there'll be a lot of movement at the top. All right. Plus, in the roundup, the Cowboys seem to be out on this possibility. And for right now, I do not blame them. We'll get into that. Cowboys Nation. What's good, Bomb Squad? How y'all doing, man?
Bomb Squad!
Yes, sir. Hope y'all 4th of July weekend was good. Hopefully you had a safe one. You didn't have a backup Terry moment. You didn't have a JPP moment. We had neither of those. We did get some fire. Let me tell you something about Texas. I didn't realize Texas fireworks regulations, whatever you want to call it, seem to be a bit more lenient than in Pennsylvania. So, you know, we went to the little fireworks store and got some legitimate ones. And we had a good time out here in our neighborhood. I appreciate them for not tripping about it. Plus, they were doing their own thing, too. Now, back in PA, depending where you're from, or even across the country, depending where you're from, you kind of got to take these loud noises into consideration, and hopefully it's just fireworks. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we'll get into that in a second, Tom. But hopefully everyone had a good one. They got the cookouts going. They saw their family or friends, or they just chill. You know, some people just had off and just relaxed and got a chance to kind of recharge for the week. And that's what I got a chance to do. Recharge for the week. We'll be on from today to Friday. Then next week, I will be off. But we'll have a full slate of shows this week. And before we get into our training camp series the following week, Cowboys Nation. Swain said, forget them neighbors. Yo, wow, man. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to jump into this roundup, come out of the roundup, and we're going to get right into the State of the Unit. We're going to talk about, it's weird, man, because this offensive line, this tackle situation at the very least, they have players that might not play tackle. We're not quite sure what they're going to do just yet until we get down there in training camp. So I omitted some players. I submitted some players. And once we get to the interior, we may come back to a couple of these dudes. But stick around. I think it'll be a good show. And, of course, you can call into the show if you would like. 351-999-3787 is the call in line. It'd be nice to hear from y'all. It's been a while. All right. So let's get into this roundup right now.
It's time! It's time! It's time! It's time! It's time! It is time for.
It's time for the morning roundup. Round 'em up, boys.
Oh, they do it. Hey, oh, they do it.
Hey, yo. Should I say, hey, Jerry? Oh, boy. Jerry Jones apparently has a docuseries in the works with Netflix. Netflix outbid ESPN, Amazon, and apparently a few other outlets to get this series. It's a 10-episode docuseries on the legendary owner, Jerry Jones. Now, reports are that this is going to be similar to The Last Dance, I guess, The Last Dance Bull series, or it's garnered comparisons, I should say, to The Last Dance, the Michael Jordan Bulls series. If you watch that, ESPN and Netflix kind of combined on that thing. So that makes sense to me, right? Because The Last Dance was mostly 90s derived. And everything that the Cowboys, in regards to nostalgia and success, is mostly 90s derived. So this is what the reports are saying here. There will be unseen interviews with Troy Aikman, Emmitt Smith, Michael Irvin, probably some other guys too. Wouldn't be shocked if you happen to catch Darren Woodson on there or something like that as well. So that's really what's going on around Jerry. And when I see this, I look, man, this just makes sense. This is Jerry Jones, and I think this is kind of what he's been regulated to. Y'all remember how, I come in here and I say they basically have Jerry doing this type of stuff, and hey man, let's go book the Jonas Brothers for things like that's Jerry. Let's get blockchain. That's Jerry Jones. That's pretty much what he's been regulated to. And if there is massive issues internally, coaching wise, player wise, something like that, then he may step in and be him. But Jerry Jones, for the most part, has been regulated to this. Now when he's hiring guys, yeah, Jerry Jones is stepping back into the ranks. But Jerry Jones, man, look, if you're into this type of stuff, then you're going to love this type of stuff. Me personally, I would love for something to happen in the present day to where we can make a Netflix documentary and be proud of it, right? I've done seen all the 90s docs. I don't need to see another. I don't understand this one. I don't need to see another 90s documentary on the Dallas Cowboys. Just me personally, I'm pretty sure everybody out there has seen them all. Read about it, saw the interviews, the documentaries, the NFL History Channel, all that type of stuff. We've seen it. Jerry, I can care less about this documentary, to be completely honest, but Jerry is going to market the hell out of it. It's going to go on Netflix. It's going to do numbers because we are America's team, and that's just how it works. Moving along. Reports last week, right before, I believe, the end of the week, or maybe at the end of the week, and it came from James Slater, and I got a chuckle because of James Slater has kind of been a bit, hot or cold this offseason. But nonetheless, James Slater said the Cowboys at this moment are not interested in the Ezekiel Elliott talk. She said this, quote, "They're just not talking about it. When I asked if there was a situation where they would bring him back, it sounds like the answer is the same I've gotten from a number of different teams, not just Dallas, but a number of different teams. It would basically require an injury to one of their other running backs. As much as I know, a lot of guys in the locker room would love to have Zeke back. There just doesn't seem like there's a lot of smoke there right now." End quote. So here's the thing. We talked about this on the Final Word, when I was on the Final Word with Boston Law, OC, Big Game James. We all talked about this. And as much as James has been hit or miss, this actually makes sense. Why would they be talking about it? Why would they have to have a bunch of conversations about Ezekiel Elliott? They quite literally know everything you could possibly know about Ezekiel Elliott. This isn't like your normal free agent where you got to put in the homework, you got to send out the FBI agent, you got to go, to the hometown. They know everything they need to know. Zeke knows everything they need to know about that. So if there was going to be a potential reunion, which I don't quite think it's ruled out just yet. I personally don't believe they need to at this moment. But if there's going to be a potential reunion, they don't have to do any talking or any homework. So I tend to believe this part. And I also agree that they shouldn't have any interest at this moment. Let's get to training camp. Let's see what these running backs can do. Let's get to some preseason games. Like I said before, I think it's going to take preseason games. Let's see what these running backs can do. And if there's a guy behind Zeke or guys behind Zeke that can't quite cut it, then you pick up the phone and you call guys that are available. And Ezekiel Elliott is probably one of those guys. But as of right now, there just doesn't need to be any conversation about bringing back Ezekiel Elliott. It makes zero sense right now. None. We'll see what happens once we get down there into camp. We'll see what happens once we get down there into preseason. And like she said, Injuries. If an injury happens, sure. But you do not need to be up in a panic to re-sign Zeke at this moment, especially if Zeke wants to come back to the Cowboys and there's interest, like legitimate interest in Dallas. They can just wait. Who is clamoring for Ezekiel Elliott to be in training camp? Nobody. No one. I digress. Danny said, I see 4 or 5 guys getting a shot, getting jobs, not a shot, in the league before Ezekiel Elliott. Well, don't get twisted. I think Zeke would definitely get a job somewhere. 100%. I mean, there's D Hop still out there. Dalvin Cook is still out there. These guys are going to play somewhere in the league. But veterans like that, especially at the running back position, where you got a lot of carries from Zeke, got a lot of carries on Dalvin Cook, a lot of touches in years, injuries on DeAndre Hopkins. I don't necessarily think they're in the market of wanting to be in camp right away or having to do all the travel right away. Now, if somebody gives them the bag, you're going to do what you got to do. But I could see those dudes waiting until training camp. 100%. I can see those dudes waiting until teams get injured or they get about second or third week in training camp, especially. You know what? I ain't going to say especially because training camp in Cali, the weather's beautiful. So it's not that bad compared to if you had to be here in Dallas outside for 6 weeks, you know? So I ain't going to trip about it that much. But he'll get a shot. He'll be on somebody's team as well as those other guys. Will it be in Dallas? TBD. But as our de facto general manager, Stephen Jones likes to say, at the end of the day, Cowboys Nation, me personally, the success of your running game largely depends on what's in front of you, largely depends on the play calling. And that's kind of where we want to start at in regards to the offensive line, the trenches, right? The Cowboys, for the most part, over the last 4 seasons or under Ezekiel Elliott, when he's been a lead back or what have you, have been a really good run team overall. Over the last 4 years, though, the numbers overall are solid, but it's kind of those minor details that matter, right? Like the play calling, the scheme, the game planning, the philosophy, the attitude is what Zach says is coming back. That was never really a thing consistently here in Dallas from a run game standpoint. No, sir. But they were largely successful in regards to overall numbers. You look at top 10 rushing team. You look at rushing touchdowns. Those things are going to be there. Pass blocking wise, last year, they kind of took a dip in regards to pass blocking win rate, right? They were one of the bottom 4 or 5 teams or something like that. And the reason why I bring that up is because the guy that we brought in, Mike Solari, actually took over probably a worse, not even probably, definitely a worse unit in Seattle and saw some changes, some good changes over there, depending on which metric you look at. But in general, we saw some good changes in Seattle. So let's kind of start with Mike Solari and the bottom of this depth chart for offensive tackles. Now, before I get to Solari, you'll notice Bostic's there, who is obviously a tackle on this team. But you'll see Asim Richards, or Awesome Richards is really what his name. Like I said at the beginning of this show, there's going to be a couple guys. Awesome Richards, Chima Edoja, Josh Ball. Hell, you could argue Tyron Smith, who are going to be doing quasi guard tackle things, but we just won't know immediately what they're going to be until you get a couple weeks out of training camp. Honestly, you won't know exactly until we get down there in training camp where these guys are going to be at. So you'll see a couple of these guys get thrown in on the interior. Some get thrown on the outside. We'll see where they elect to play. Well, let's start with Coach Mike Solari, okay? Mike Solari has been around this league for a very long time. Very, very long time. Since 1987, all right, with these Cowboys. It's a thing here. He was with Tom Landry on his way out. But, and people can, key and laugh about it. But throughout his tenure as an offensive line coach or assistant or wherever he's been, he's had a lot of success. Stops at San Francisco, Kansas City, the Giants. He's been everywhere. But his latest stop, I should say, was in Seattle. And I would deem his Seattle stint from 2018 to 2021, I would deem that a success. Anybody remember Tom Cable? Tom Cable, I think he went on to be the head coach for the Raiders briefly, but he was an offensive line coach in Seattle. And those lines were not good. They were, in fact, they were bad. And that's saying something, because a lot of the Seattle lines during Solari's tenure, we were questioning like, hey, man, what's happening here from this, from that. But when you really dive into it, which I had to do, I did it when we hired him, I did it again. There was actually an improvement under Mike Solari from Tom Cable. In his first year in Seattle, they jumped to 3rd overall in pass block win rate. 3rd overall. You wouldn't think that with Seattle. In fact, his 4 seasons in total, he averaged out to 10th overall in pass block win rate in Seattle. You might be saying, well, what about the sacks or the Russell Wilson is not easy to block for. If you watch Russ a lot, Russ is a guy that runs into trouble. That's just Russ. But the statistic in general, not saying it's the end all be all, right? But the statistic in general takes into account how fast you're getting beat off the snap, not necessarily a bunch of scrambling. Nonetheless, PFF didn't much like their offensive line, but from a pass block win rate standpoint, they were a pretty solid unit. And I think Mike Solari obviously helped in that aspect. You could also go to the running game if you want to go to the running game too. Now, Tom Cable in his final season didn't have a running back, I don't believe, over 250 yards, something like that. Enter Mike Solari and Brian Schottenheimer, by the way. Those two guys work together. They have that history. He also has a history with Mike McCarthy. And those dudes were constantly like a top 10 rushing team for the most part. At one point, they led the league in rushing. Was it all Mike Solari offensive line? No, because their offensive line was still not the greatest from a talent standpoint, but I think he helped coach them into being respectable in certain aspects. So then what the hell happened in Seattle, Scott? They decided to move on from Mike Solari after they moved on from Brian Schottenheimer. Now, they gave it a year, okay? Schottenheimer got let go. They brought in Shane Waldron, who was still the offensive coordinator over there in Seattle. And those two guys, I don't want to say clashed physically and yelling and screaming, but their philosophies clashed. Waldron comes from the Rams, McVay. Solari doesn't come from that school of thinking. And they also hired an assistant offensive line coach that worked with the Rams, who was brought on in Seattle to be kind of a guy to help mold Shane Waldron's scheme. So essentially they brought in his replacement but kept Solari around. Think of it as 2015. I think it was 2013. Got to get my dates right here. But remember when the Cowboys had Bill Callahan? Callahan was the offensive coordinator. Then he got stripped, and he got demoted to just purely offensive line coach. Callahan said, hey, man, can I go? They said, nope. So he stuck around, I want to say, for the 2014 season. I can't quite remember, but he stuck around for one more year. And then they let him go, and it was Scott Linehan who took over completely. Think of it kind of in that similar situation. They kept Solari around for one more season. Their philosophies clashed. Boom. He was gone after the 2020 season. And here we are 2 years later with Mike Solari. So they asked Coach Mike Solari during the draft, which I'm surprised they don't have his video just up, because we don't hear from Coach Solari. We hear the players talk about him. He doesn't seem like a guy that's an interview type of guy, but he did do an interview during the draft, and he asked Coach Solari about what he looks for in his offensive lineman, or what is one of those traits. I think it was Brian Broadus who asked him, what's one of those traits that you just can't teach, or you're really looking for in an offensive lineman? This is what Coach Solari had to say.
If you had to pick a number one trait for a lineman just say, give me this guy, give me this trait, what would that be for somebody that would play for you?
Again, length. You can't coach length. And again, that's a great thing about the Cowboys. They've done a great job here with the offensive linemen here that have length in the sense of talking about, with the arms and so forth. And you really kind of emphasize first significant touch, getting your hands on the defender before he gets his hands on you. So that's really a significant thing that we're looking for.
When you talk about length, let's go back to this real quick. How do you not start with Matt Waletzko, right? 6'8" product out of North Dakota. Not state, North Dakota. 6'8". I think we talked not two, but via the chat here. I know Danny keeps asking, well, what's his weight? What's his weight? Apparently, it looks like Matt Waletzko's put on some more lean, like some more muscle. I don't necessarily know how much that translates to weight-wise, but that was going to naturally happen. A guy who was already coming in the offseason last year, wiry and young and no really offseason peanut butter. This is the first year he'll get that offseason peanut butter. Plus, he had the whole shoulder situation. So he got the shoulder surgery, and we'll see where he goes from here. It sounds like he's having a solid camp at this exact moment. But Matt Waletzko, when I went back and rewatched Matt Waletzko, here's what I'll say about him last year. By the way, 36 and 1/8 inch arms puts him at the 92 percentile among tackles. So when you talk about length, Matt Waletzko is a guy that has length in spades. But when I went back and watched Matt Waletzko, I'm going to say this first. He was much better than Josh Ball. I will give him that. He looked more comfortable over there. He looked more sure of himself over there. He was much better than Josh Ball. And the one and only game that he played, if you guys remember, he injured the shoulder in training camp, did not come back until the very end of training camp to play in this Seattle game. But at the end of the day, I do think if Waletzko had to play, would he have been better than Ball? Sure. But would he have been better than Jason Peters? Would he have been better than the other guy? I don't think so. I don't think Matt Waletzko would have been a guy year one you were ready to count on. That's something that going into the season, we were saying. He needed to be a guy that was a reserve that can get in the weight room, can build up his game, get stronger, get better. Hopefully, that's what happens. If he gets better at the point of attack, stronger at the point of attack, a little better with his hands, right? When you watch this game, I thought you saw him deal with, and again, this is preseason last year against Seattle, so I'm not trying to take it totally out of context here. But when you're looking at linemen, I think you're not necessarily trying to look at the competition they're playing. You're trying to look at the movements. You're trying to look at the technique. How's his hand placement? What is his anchor like? How is he firing out? Is he shooting fast? Is he confident? And I think you saw some of the positives about Waletzko, and you saw some of the things that said, okay, he's got to get better in this aspect. You saw the potential, but you saw the flaws. And there's one right there, the strength, right? The anchor. At 6'8", it's tough to sit that, as they say, sit that ass down and get dug in for guys that are going to be stronger, the Boses of the world that's going to push against you. But he's nimble. He's got the athleticism. He's got the length. I definitely think he has the IQ. I think it's better than Josh Ball's. In fact, I'd argue, he dealt with some of those stunts a little better than some other guys in preseason and in training camp that are more highly touted. And I'll just leave it at that. But nonetheless, if Matt Waletzko proves that he got stronger, the injury situation is behind him, there's something there, and I'll leave the ceiling at this. There's something there for him to be a valuable swing tackle. Hopefully left tackle, because there's a different conversation we'll have later. But a valuable swing tackle. So there's something there with Matt Waletzko. I don't know necessarily that he'll see the field this year, depending on what they decide to do with Tyron Smith, and we'll get to that later. But if you have to, and this is very early, we're talking about July 5th here, man. Y'all ain't even really seen him out there. None of us have. We just got preseason tape and reports that we've heard. If you had to put a number on it, though, your confidence level in Matt Waletzko having to step in at left tackle during the season, between 1 and 10, if you can give me one. The confidence level on Matt Waletzko, if he had to step in at left tackle during the season, and it may be not a fair question because we haven't seen him in practice, and we obviously haven't seen a preseason game. But I'm going to take the easy route out, and I'm just going to sit here and just put it dead smack in the middle. Let's just put it at 5. Not great, not bad, just kind of 5. You know, he has a lot to work on, you know, strength wise. He has a lot to work on with his hands, but I don't know if those things have improved just yet. As Law likes to say, a lot of known unknowns with Matt Waletzko. But I put it dead smack in the middle. I'm not going to fake the funk and act like I'm super confident in this guy. I'm not. But I'm also not going to act like the world is over if he gets put in there. So I'm at a 5 with it. And I'm honestly kind of taking the easy route out because I'm putting dead smack in the middle until I see more. Now, when I come back to this question, though, right? When I come back to this question, say August 5th, August 10th, August 12th, whatever it may be. Now that number should have more merit to it. It should have more merit to it. Let's see what y'all got to say. 2 from Tom, 6 from Sully, 5 from Roe, 6, 5. Okay. Kind of in the middle here. Fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, he's only been in the league for a year. Tom, so not as if he's been in the league for 10 years. All he's done is got hurt. He's only been in the league for 1 year. Relax. Let's see here. Danny says solid. Are you talking about the peanut butter? Yeah. So you've been asking a question about the weight gain on Matt Waletzko, and I believe it was Aisha. And when I say her name, I gotta press the button. I'm sorry, y'all. Aisha. She said that he looks leaner. So leaner could mean also a little bit more muscle mass there. But he was already kind of a linear guy. I just hope that muscle equates to strength and we're able to see some improvement on the field. And again, when he was out there, he looked better than a lot of those reserve guys last season. Not good enough for them not to go out and get a Jason Peters, though. And that's why I said I don't think they could trust him last year to come in there and hold down the left tackle for it. This year could be a different story. Add some offensive peanut butter, get better in the weight room, get better from a mental standpoint too, right? All those things could change. Now let's start talking about the guys that we really want to hear about. Got to begin with Tyron Smith. Tyron was brought back, and y'all know how I feel about Tyron Smith. Tyron Smith is going to go down as one of the all-time Cowboys. It just is what it is, man. He's one of the best draft picks they've ever made. The problem is, though, as we all know, the numbers 2, 4, and 11. Actually, it might be 2, 11, and 4. He's missed a ton of games. A ton of games over the last 3 seasons, and really, honestly, in the last 7 seasons. So he's a hurt guy. And it's one of the reasons why they decided to alter his contract. They didn't bring him back and restructure the contract in the sense of, well, we're pushing money down. No, they completely re-altered that contract where they took away about $9 million from Tyron Smith and said, you have to get that back through incentives. So his restructured deal looks like this: $3 million guaranteed, $3 million in the signing bonus, $6 million is what he's going to get, definitely going to get, with the other $9 million being made up from playing time incentives and $2 million made up through the playoffs. So this is kind of reminiscent, if y'all remember, to Sean Lee. You know, Sean Lee at the end of his career took a similar situation here where they was like, look, we're going to pay you based on how much you play because you're a hurt guy. I know you're one of our best picks that we've made or whatever, and you're this and that, but you are a hurt guy. We cannot depend on you. Or are they? My main issue with bringing back Tyron Smith was depending on Tyron Smith. You want to bring him back to be a swing guy, if you want to bring him back to be the mentor, or you bring him back with the understanding that I ain't going to play 15 games. Although we have this bet with one of the viewers who says Tyron Smith will play more than 14 games this season. Bet $100 on it. I said, okay, I'm going to take that. He hasn't played 14 games since 2015. I'm not hating on the guy. I'm not wishing ill will on Tyron. I hope like hell Tyron Smith plays 20 games. But why would I sit here and believe that? I'm not going to do that. The Cowboys, are they banking on that? Feels a little bit like it. But we'll get to Tyler in a bit because he's a guy that's a linchpin that kind of changes all this. But Tyron Smith brought back, and at the beginning of, what was it? OTAs. We were all kind of, Tyron Smith is at right tackle. Terence Steele's out though. Tyron Smith's at right tackle. Tyler Smith's at left tackle. The whole debate about where to move Terence and things like that. So we were kind of cringing our teeth and frowning our faces and a little bit annoyed. I'll admit I was a little bit annoyed. And then minicamp comes. It was Clarence Hill who brought up the question again, and it was Coach Mike McCarthy who said, hey, this week we're going to be working Tyron Smith at left tackle and Tyler Smith at left guard. You'll love to hear that. So the reason why I think that is a bit significant is because in minicamp, that's where they're beginning their stages to start training camp. That's out of Mike McCarthy's mouth. He said this week it's going to be similar, to the other weeks. However, we're about to start the ramp up for training camp. And if that is the ramp up for training camp, that should indicate that Tyron Smith will be your left tackle to start. We understand what happens with Tyron Smith, but that would be your left tackle to start. And honestly, that's really what should happen. Well, Sky, why is Tyler Smith up here for offensive tackles? Just stick around for that. So, sir, in the comments that did the whole $100 bet, look, bro, I hope you're right. Let me just start out with that. I do, but I just don't believe that Tyron will be around for 15, 16, 17 games. I think it's the win that is most important for Tyron. If Tyron can be around for the last 12 games of the season, 10 games of the season, that's really where you want him. Tyron comes out the gates firing for the first 5-6 games, and he goes down and he can't come back at all. That's what sucks. And that's why either I was, hey, let's just move forward, or he designate him as a swing guy. But it looks like he's going to be a left tackle to start. Which brings me to my cousin Terence. Y'all know how I feel about Terence Steele. And all jokes aside, for those who may be new here, or for those who've been sticking around, it may sound like I have this weird bias to Terence. I do not. Yeah, we share last name. Yeah, I make some jokes about him calling my cousin, but I was a guy highly critical of Terence, like most of us were, during his rookie year, right? And in training camp and preseason, going into his second season. So this isn't about showing favoritism. This is about him earning this praise. And Terence Steele did that to the tune that he got designated a second round restricted free agent tender that he signed back in April that is going to pay him about $4.3 million. Okay. $4.3 million may not sound like a lot, but for Terence Steele, it is a lot because he was getting paid, bare minimum or something like that as an undrafted free agent for 3 seasons. So good for T. Good for Terence Steele getting the bag. Here's the thing, though. He's also coming off that ACL injury. And coming off that ACL injury has got a lot of people kind of worried about him. Fair enough. I get it. People are worried about guys coming back from ACLs. However, right away, we heard, I shouldn't say right away, I should say about February or March, somewhere around there. We heard that Terence Steele was kind of ahead of schedule. A lot of people rolled their eyes. Okay. And then he put out a video. And a couple months later, he put out another video. And this is kind of the newest video via our guy, Duke, founder, co-founder, creator of O-Line Mastermind. He's, by the way, working with Duke, as he should. So is Tyler Smith and a couple other guys. But this is the latest video of Terence Steele working out. And look, man, you can call me a forever optimist. You can call me rose-colored glasses, how you looking at this. I don't see a guy that's not going to be ready for the start of the season. I see a guy that's going to be ready for the start of the season. I just do. He continues to be on track to be available. And if he is, then we can, I think, put to rest this whole Terence Steele playing guard situation. Especially once we saw how they were ramping up in minicamp with Tyron Smith at left guard. So if Terence Steele is going to be available week 1 at right tackle, your offensive line is already better than it is at this moment, where you have Tyron Smith potentially being your right tackle, or Josh Ball, or Matt Waletzko, whoever the hell is out there. Because me personally, Terence Steele is one of the better right tackles in this league, and he's going to continue to ascend in the ranks of right tackles in this league. But Sky's ACL. We just saw what happened with Michael Gallup. 2 different positions, 2 different bodies, 2 different requirements. I don't think you're going to see the same physical elements on the field that we saw with Michael Gallup. In fact, it was to the point where I wanted to talk to our doctor. We got a doctor that comes in there, Dr. Boothby of OSMI. Shout out to him. I wanted to talk to our doctor about it. So I asked him, hey, doc, is there a possibility a guy like, an offensive lineman can recover better on the field than a guy at a skill position? But I'll let myself ask that question in a more detailed situation. So here's me and Dr. Boothby talking a few months back about Terence Steele. So let's just say that, it does heal up on a regular basis. There's normally a time period for receivers or skill guys that it takes even more months to kind of get back right. We're seeing it with Michael Gallup. He's still not the same guy, but eventually he'll get back to that guy. Is it? I mean, I know you're not a coach or anything like that, but you are a physician, so you know how these body parts move. Is it something where it's a little bit easier for that particular position, a big guy like a tackle, to get back right quicker than a skill player?
Yeah, I mean, I do. I mean, there's no question that the amount of explosion, the amount of agility it requires from the on the skill player side. I think you can see the difference for longer. Once we get them biologically healed. Now, the inside guys, it's not that those guys don't put significant pressure and rotational forces across their knee. If you think about, what these guys are trying to do when guys are literally trying to take them down, there's a tremendous amount of footwork involved, not just straight line stuff, but rotational and energy that goes left and right in order to, block and attack. So, I mean, it's not that these big guys don't require a significant amount of kind of training to get back, but I totally agree with you. To the naked eye, I think that you're going to see it more. You're going to see the difference for longer in a skill player when they're trying to create separation or have that energy boost. Then you're going to see it with an interior lineman.
Indeed, and that's kind of what. And he said interior meant obviously offensive tackle, because that's what I brought up. But that's kind of where I'm at with it. Like, you're going to see that effect on a skill player more than you're going to see it with an offensive lineman. And again, we can poo-poo as much as we want at the video, but I don't know how you look at this and you're under this impression that he's going to be ailing come October, November from the knee. This is 2023, man. ACL injuries are no longer career-ending injuries, and especially when it comes to offensive linemen. So you could call it, just being optimistic. Maybe that's what it is, but I have every belief that Terence Steele will be back. And Terence Steele will be back being Terence Steele, being one of your better run blockers, probably your best run blocker, being one of the best run blocking right tackles in the league, and continuing to ascend as a pass blocker. I think he's got better each year as a pass blocker. He's got all the traits you want. He has the length. He has the athleticism. He has the work ethic, which may be the most important thing here for any player, really. We talk about this a lot. Your talent sets the ceiling, or sets the floor. Your character sets the ceiling, and he's got that in spades. Now, there's a whole nother conversation about Terence Steele, and that conversation can revolve around the money, can revolve around the contract. Do you elect to keep him around? Due to the restricted free agent tender, they don't have to make that decision. Said it a million times, I keep saying it. I would have paid him a contract going into last year to get ahead of this thing. A position group you don't want to mess with is tackle. If you got one that you know about, you're sure about, he's the right kind of guy. I know we make fun of that, but seriously, he's the right kind of guy and loving the game and has that work ethic and has the talent and is continuing to ascend. I personally wouldn't want to mess with that. I would re-sign that guy and he'd be a part of my future at left tackle. I'm sorry, at right tackle, because I think I got my future at left tackle. But Scott, they got to pay this person. They got to pay that. You're right. They do. You know what I say? Figure it out. Figure it out, because I don't think they've put the resources into replacing both tackles for the future. Not yet. If you want to go into next year, you want to say, hey, we'll let Terence Steele walk and we'll grab our right tackle of the future in next year's draft. Cool. You can pigeonhole yourself into that situation again and hope like hell it falls the way you want it to fall. Didn't happen this year. From an offensive guard or offensive tackle standpoint, they didn't take an offensive lineman until the 5th round. They could have maybe jumped at that early. I don't think a guy like Austin Richards is going to be your right tackle. I don't think that's going to be the case. He projects to slide inside, but we'll see what happens once we get down there. Waletzko could potentially be your right tackle, but again, I'm waiting to see more of Matt Waletzko before I'm ready to stamp that. I know what I got in Terence. Got one of the best right tackles in the league that is going to continue to ascend at the age of 25? What is 25, 26? So he's still, you could argue, ain't even hit his prime yet. So give me Terence Steele on this team. I'm signing him and keeping him around. Figure it out is how I look at it. Figure it out. D Shift said use Tyron's money for Steele. Could have been done. You know, could have been done. There's sometimes an attachment, though, you know. Some people argue, you know, Zeke. Some people argue Tyron are guys that probably should have been gone sooner. They let go of Zeke this offseason. They brought back Tyron Smith. I agree, Zeke. I agree, Shift. I would have potentially used that money to re-sign Terence, me personally. Shift said, you have faith in year 3? Well, let's go. I got to see what year 2 look like, you know? I got to see there is potential there. And we said that when we did our rating and draft on Matt Waletzko. I think we gave him long-term outlook. I think it was a 3. But if you looked at my notes on that, it was mostly about a swing guy. It was, hey, man, yeah, sure. He can come in here and in long-term potentially be a swing guy. But he's got to go out there and do what Terence did. You know, Terence had his ups and downs early in his career, but he showed improvement. Now I have faith in the Terence Steele. Do I have faith in Matt? I can't give you a yes on that just yet. You know what I'm saying? Josh Ball, no sir. No sir. I have no faith in Josh. Like Josh, look, the difference between the two, Matt Waletzko has essentially one game, like a week's worth of practice that we've seen where I'm like, it was down here in Dallas. He came back in Dallas the last like 2 or 3 practices. And I was down at the Star watching him and me boss Law like, hey man, Matt, well, let's go. Yeah, looking better than Josh Ball. So you got that one game and that 2 or 3 practices. And I've got 2 years, a bunch of practices and a bunch of preseason games. Look at Josh Ball and be like, hey dog, he ain't it. So unless he go out here and he's him, no faith. None. Triple D says, what kind of contract are we looking at for Steele? Well, if you go look at the top right tackles, you're probably looking around $13 to $15 million would be a favorable contract for Terence Steele. It's facts. Hey, Foch here. What up, bro? He said that boy Josh had one good series and 9. Like, y'all think that's not a joke? Not a joke, man. Josh Ball did not look good ever. I mean, no. I'll say this: run blocking. Hey, you tell Josh Ball, hey, dog, put your head down, put a body on the body and just push. Who's doing that, all right? Pass blocking, no sir. Gonna get your quarterback killed. People get pissed at that interception from Dak against the Texans. You know, the mainstream. Well, they completely ignore certain things. The mainstream will ignore that Josh Ball got his ass whooped 2 plays in a row, and your offensive coordinator, after getting his ass whooped, decided to drop back with no help on Josh Ball's side. We're just going to let you continue to get your ass whooped. Dak gets his arm hit, interception. I digress. G says you pay offensive tackles, you draft offensive guards. I like that philosophy. Now, unless you're running to Zach Martin, different story, right? But I'm with you. And that, great segue, that could be the reason why you see a guy like Tyron Smith become ultimately your future left tackle. Because tackles are just harder to find. That's just the facts. And Tyron Smith could be an absolute monster at guard guy. However, tackles are really, really hard to find, man, which is why I'm trying to pay Terence and why I understand Tyron Smith being your future left tackle. Well, Sky, if he's not your tackle this year, why is he up here? Because at some point he's going to be your tackle. Unless Matt Waletzko absolutely goes berserk, he's probably going to be your left tackle at some damn point in the season. And that's why I call him our linchpin of this offensive line, y'all. Because he's got that raw ability. He's got the work ethic. He has the youth, the availability. And I think it's why the Cowboys approached the offensive line the way they did this offseason. Do I agree with it? No. I ain't going to sit here and give y'all a bunch of Skittles and rainbows. No, I wanted to go get a left side player type of guy. I wanted to go get a guard or a tackle to replace Tyron, or quote unquote replace Tyler being the left guard. They didn't necessarily do that. They waited. They got Austin Richards, and maybe he's a guy in the 5th round. I don't know that he's going to be the guy this year, though. In fact, I know he's not going to be the guy this year at left guard because it's probably going to be Tyron Smith. But they asked Tyron Smith. He was not sure where he was. Maybe a camp for the kids or what have you. Just a great young kid. A good mind on his head. Obviously, right kind of guy. But they asked Tyron Smith about his versatility and him working with Duke. Well, he brought up him working with Duke. But here's what Tyron Smith had to say about that. Let me see here. Do I got Tyron Smith here? No. Actually, I'm going to start off with Solari on Tyron Smith, and then I'm going to get to Tyron Smith in general. Here's Solari on Tyron Smith.
Do you have an ideal spot for Tyler where you see him playing, staying at tackle, or do you think you'd like to see him inside at guard?
Well, again, the key thing, we're going to get the best men on the field, but, this offseason, we're going to be working him at tackle. And again, he has the flex. Obviously, he did a great job last year, and it's exciting to work with somebody like that. That has such great qualities of an offensive lineman. It's exciting because he's just an ascending football player. So it's really, exciting to work with a young man like that. And then again, when you got Tyron and Zach as leaders, how to do it right, you can't beat it. Because again, all you do is just look as far as their example and follow their theme. They do a beautiful job. I mean, right now we're just kind of in the phase 1, but they're such great leaders of men. And again, we're just in a classroom setting, but again, just their aura about them, they have that leadership. I mean, they are focused, locked in, and there's great examples for anybody to learn from.
I mean, he ain't definitely not lying about that. We said this last year with Tyler playing both guard tackle. You got 3 Hall of Famers at both positions. You got a guy like Jason Peters and Tyron Smith to learn from, and then Zach Martin to learn guard things from. He's been put in a very special situation here in Dallas. It was Nick Eatman, I think, who asked him about the whole guard tackle thing and off-season peanut butter. Voch is in the building. You can see him actually get a little bit bigger, and he talked about it. And this is his words. He said, "Yeah, I'm a little bit more beefier, this year, but he understands that you also have to stay athletic and nimble because he's going to be playing both." But here's Tyron Smith on playing guard and tackle.
The biggest thing is just staying versatile. I'm a left-sided player. I don't know, specifically what's going to happen in training camp, but just staying ready is my biggest thing. And that's something I carry into my training as well. Like when I'm across the street with Duke, like, just working guard, working tackle, like making sure I'm proficient in both of those and just making sure, I'm on all my cues for that. So that's probably the biggest part that I'm trying to focus on for this pre-training camp and training camp, really. I mean, I feel like it can definitely help to be beefier on the inside because, you're going against bigger guys like who not moving as fast on the edge. But I think staying nimble is important too because, like, even Zach is like probably like 310, 315, but like he's so strong and his technique is so good. Like you don't see him have many problems with like that strength aspect. So I think the biggest thing is just staying out of weight where, you still got that blend of athleticism and strength. Like you don't feel too slow, too sluggish, but you still kind of twitchy at the same time.
Man, I just like this kid, man. I say this about the Marvion Overshown. He'll figure it out. There's just something about him that makes me believe he will figure out whatever they decide to do with him. So the conversation now becomes, and I've seen we're having it in the chat. I see we're having it here. The conversation becomes what's best for him, what's best for the team. A lot of us are divided, guard, tackle, not necessarily divided, right? Because I think a lot of people believe he'd be a fantastic guard. But for 2024 and beyond, he's likely going to be your left tackle. However, for right now, Tyler Smith has to be your left guard. He has to. Mike Solari said the key is getting the best men on the field. This is where the whole good and bad thing comes into play at the tackle position. For as much as we poo-poo the injuries of Tyron Smith, for the injury to Terence Steele, for the what the hell are we doing with Tyler Smith, I'm sorry. There is 3 reliable, or when I say reliable, I shouldn't say that with Tyron Smith, but 3 quality tackles that you have on this team. That's hard to say around the league. Dallas has 3 starting quality tackles on this team in Tyler Smith, Terence Steele, and Tyron Smith. They all can't play tackle though, right? So obviously Tyler has to move inside. You have to sacrifice the future for the now, and I am on board with that. I am 100% on board with that because it should be about getting 6 right now, not about the development of said player. Dallas isn't they're in the draft to develop business, but they aren't in the development is the end all result business. They are in the we need to win the goddamn Super Bowl business. We need to get to the NFC Championship business. So we got to do what's best for this team. And what's best for this team is Tyler Smith at left guard for 2023. It may change next year. It may change week 6. Who the hell knows? We don't know what the backup tackles are going to look like. But what I do know is heading into week 1 against the Giants, your tackles should absolutely be Tyron at left, Terence at right, with Tyler Smith at left guard. That's what has to happen in 2023. Beyond that, a conversation would have to be had, obviously, depending on what they decide to do the following year, depending on what's out there in free agency, what's out there in the draft. But you need, and I'm using the term need, you need Tyler at left guard. You do, if you want to put the best 5 out there. So why is he on offensive tackles? Because at some point he's going to be a left tackle. Y'all know it. Y'all know it just as much as I know it. Tyron going to go down and Tyler going to be a left tackle. And that's where we'll get into the interior and we'll talk about who has a potential to step up there. Not if, but likely when that happens. So it's weird. The tackle situation is extremely weird because you got 3 quality tackles. I don't know how many teams can say that for real. I don't. But there's an asterisk put on that, right? There's a Tyron Smith availability asterisk. There's Terence Steele coming back from injury asterisk. And then there's Tyler Smith. Where the hell is he going to play asterisk? So really weird situation for a guy like Solari, who, if you look at what I have right here, I say task of grooming depth on the offensive line. I truly believe that is what he's going to have to do here. There's not much he's going to have to do from an offensive starter standpoint. He's got some ballers. And I think that's where the mainstream media kind of is relying on. When people say the Cowboys have a great offensive line, they did not. They did not, and they do not. However, they have guys that you can get the job done with. How long would Tyron be there? We don't know. We know about the center. I think he's continuing to get better. Zach Martin, Terence Steele is a fine right tackle, and Tyler Smith, I think, is going to be he is a stud. He's going to be one of the better guys here over the coming years. So you've got a good enough line. This ain't 2014, though. Like, people or the mainstream seem to believe this offensive line is 2014, 2016. This ain't that. Shout out to Core. This ain't that. But it's good enough, I think, to get the job done. That's where coaching is going to come in. Schematics are going to come in. Play calling is going to come in. Again, Mike Solari, first year coming into Seattle. Tom Cable's offensive lines were terrible. The schemes weren't great. That's why they switched out offensive coordinator Brian Schottenheimer. First year, they go from being abysmal to being the number one rushing team in the league. First year, they go from being abysmal pass blocking to being third overall in pass block win rate. I don't think that's a coincidence. Now you're bringing on those guys that did that. You're bringing on Mike Solari. You got Brian Schottenheimer as your offensive coordinator / kind of right hand, let's be honest, right hand to Mike McCarthy. I think there is room for optimism at the tackle and offensive line position to at least be more stable in what they want to do. You could argue talent, you can argue depth, that's fair. But at least I think there will be cohesion across the board for what they want to do on the offensive line. There will be a philosophy. There will be a way. There will be an attitude. You listen to your Hall of Famer right guard. There will be an attitude on that line. Over the 4 years, man, we talk about this a lot. We can herald all those beautiful numbers. Number one offense. We can throw all that stuff out there. But as you and I know, it wasn't about the volume. It never was. It was a lot about what is our philosophy? What happens in crunch time when we need to, hunker down and get things done? I said this before. Maybe I'll bring it up at another point. I don't think it is a coincidence that this team, quarterback, whatever you want to call it, tailed off in regards to fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives compared to the first 3 seasons. I don't think that is a coincidence. When you led the league in fourth quarter comebacks and game-winning drives, the first 3 seasons, and then these last 4 under Kellen Moore, you've been kind of poor at it. Let's just be completely honest. And when you go and look at, in my opinion, the X's and O's of things, I'll say the Patriots game was the one game where you saw the X's and O's really shine through at the end of moments. But other than that, the Cowboys really had to rely on the backs of 4 or the backs of whether it be 21 or 20 to get those things done. And there's going to be a lot of times, man, where you're going to need your philosophy, your scheme to shine through when it matters most. What can you lean on when it's been a tough game? What can you lean on when you still have the ability to go down there and win? Do you have something that you can reach back in your bag to and say, hey, man, we know we're good at this. We know they can't stop this. I don't think we had that, I don't think we had that. And that's why you hear Zach Martin say we're going to have an attitude. He's bringing back an attitude up front. We hear about Coach McCarthy talking about making things a bit easier for everybody on that field, because that's the secret sauce, right? Less thinking, faster play, better results. I digress. The Guru says, will this run scheme, where'd you go? Will this run scheme be Shanahan-like that is big on cutback lanes? It sounds like we're going to have a different outside zone look. So, and that usually presents multiple lanes to plant your foot and go. But if we look at the history of Solari and at least the history of Solari and Schottenheimer, this is more of a gap scheme that they had in Seattle. Solari been around a long time, man. He's been in multiple teams, multiple franchises. He has experience in zone. He has experience in power. He has experience in gap. And you possibly will see a combination of those. And having a guy like Tyler Biadasz, Zach Martin, Terence, who's been around, those guys I think can adapt. Tyron, I should say Tyron as well. And look, I'm gonna say Tyler. Tyler is a heady dude, smart player. I think he can handle whatever they ask of him. But I do, man, and call it blind optimism. I believe in Solari coming here and presenting a philosophy that will jive from top to bottom, which will bring better results, finishing results. Let me say that, which will bring better finishing results for this team. I do, man. I just think we'll see a team that will finish more grittier and will finish better than we had over the last 4 seasons. Because that's been the problem. It's been finishing. It hasn't been the glitz and glamour, the numbers. It's been about finishing. And I'll continue to preach that. All right, let's hit these phone lines very quick. We got 757 with the phone lines. We'll read some of these super chats, man, and we'll keep it moving. 757 on the horn. What's good, man?
What's going on, Will? I want to, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Got you loud and clear.
Okay. Yeah, I want to tap in on what you were just saying about how the last 4 years we weren't able to finish. And I want to go back to the 2021 season, man. That Broncos game, you remember that Broncos game, the infamous Broncos game, when they came in there and, you know what I'm saying, they gave us an old-fashioned whooping.
Yep.
And after that game, Vic Fangio said nobody was playing them right.
Yep.
And after that game, it just seemed like only against the bad, like the teams without good records, they couldn't get on track. If they played a decent, a good team or something like that, because,
defense. Let's say that. You mean the top defenses? Yeah.
Yeah, the top defenses, or just the better teams, man. It just seemed like we couldn't get on track because it's like they laid out that blueprint, and Kellen Moore couldn't adjust. And that's when that experience comes in. Okay, if they start, doing this, how do we adjust to that? And it's like they just couldn't adjust to it. And that's, like I said, that's where the experience comes in, man. And, it got better last year, but like I said, down when we get to the nitty gritty, when we, in a dog fight, what do we need to do to adjust? It just never seemed like he can make the second half adjustments. You know what I mean? And it showed in some games, also, whether it be the Jacksonville game, the Green Bay game, and I actually think we'll be better at that, moving forward, just with the experience, having that experience.
I'll tell you the game that it really shined through. It was against the lowly Texans. That game to me, there was plenty of games where you look back and say, man, we have to either change this philosophy, bro, or move on from our play caller. Because when you watch that game, the Texans didn't do anything sexy, dog. All they did was just drop back in shell coverage and play Tampa 2, cover 2 type of situation. And they did not do anything. In fact, they were running things that cover 2 defenses, Tampa 2 defenses invite, right? And the reason why I bring up this game is because even on the last drive, go watch how hard the last drive was. And it was a game-winning drive. That drive had shit to do with scheme. Absolutely nothing to do with it. We quite literally were doing the same damn things, except for we were making super tight passes, precision passes, amazing catches, and just making clutch plays at the end of that game. It wasn't anything easy. And sometimes when I go and watch other teams, I'm like, how in these tight moments am I getting A.J. Brown running wide open across the middle? How am I getting this tight end screen getting 30 yards? How am I getting this running back eating up 15, 20 yards? How is this happening when we're fighting tooth and nail for every damn yard to win a damn game? So, that game right there kind of did it for me. Where like we gotta figure this out, dog. Because if teams can come out here and run this, this basic ass thing against us, what's going to happen when we run into a more talented team on defense, better coach team on defense? It's not going to be pretty.
And it won't. And we've seen it at the the 49ers game. But the main thing, man, I was beating on the table. Your best receiver is CeeDee Lamb. It shouldn't be no reason why you aren't scheming plays for him to get open at the end of the game. You know what I'm saying? We need that win. You should be doing everything in your power to get CeeDee Lamb open, or get the ball to Lamb. Or not a doubt you can get him open.
Or understanding that teams are going to know you're going to do that, so use him as a decoy, because it happened against the Jacksonville game. 3rd and 10, you get a first down, you win the game. They put 3 dudes on CeeDee Lamb. So if you know that's going to happen, why the hell were you sending Noah Brown on a go route?
Exactly.
And that's what we're targeting. Why not bring him underneath on a slant, on an over route, or maybe send him on a slant and then bring Tony Pollard behind and have him one-on-one against a. It's just look, I'm no offensive coordinator, but there's just some simple things you just have to do in certain situations, and I think that's why you saw Mike McCarthy come out and say situational football has to improve.
Yeah, and real quick, I know about the Zach Martin, how he say when be more physical and everything that he said. If you notice, you remember certain times last year when plays were called, I don't know, it was shown like after it was videos out there.
I know what you're talking about.
And he's throwing his hands up like, what are you doing? What are you calling?
I think it
was.
You
know what I mean?
Lions game? It was Lions or Texans. I know exactly what you're talking about. He made a play call, and there's an audio out there that Zach Martin was like something along the lines of, what the F are we doing? Or why are you calling this, or something like that?
Yeah. But that's all I got, man.
Hey, good stuff, man. Great call.
Yeah.
Let's get D Schiff in the building. What's good, Schiff?
Hey, what's good, man? I like this offensive line talk. One of the hardest positions, I think, for y'all to really be able to evaluate. I know Vach is excellent at it, but man, one thing I noticed with our team, and as far as I was looking at a pass block and run block win rate for other teams, and the Chiefs and the Eagles, they have the most guys on those top 10 lists, right? So I was thinking looking at just rankings and where our team ranks, we actually don't really rank too bad in preseason kind of lists, all the lists that are being compiled right now. But I wonder, I don't see us as that high at times, because there's a lot of paranoia around the line. But looking at other teams as well, they have a lot of bad things. So I'm just kind of lost in everything. And as you're talking about things, you're answering things. But I'm just kind of wondering, Scott, how are we still kind of looked at as a respected line, but at the same time, you as far as honestly, as far as pass blocking, we weren't that great last year. So how are we still being respected or kind of semi-respected around the league? And I'll leave you with that now.
It is an interesting observation. I think it's twofold, actually. Appreciate the call, D-Shift. I think the reason why I say it's twofold, I think it's the Cowboy or the media leaning on the Cowboys lore of yesteryear in regards to offensive line, right? There's moniker out there that Dak Prescott and Kellen and McCarthy and they've had this amazing offensive line for 10 years. It's not the case. It's just not the case. But in the same breath, I think you can acknowledge that the current healthy offensive line is good enough to be able to get the job done. I'm not going to sit here and act like it's the Eagles or hell, even the Chiefs. It's not. And we don't have a Jeff Stoutland. We don't. I don't know we don't know about Mike Solari enough here in Dallas to put him up there with Stoutland. Maybe his resume you could argue, but right now, we don't have the Jeffs. We don't know about if he can be our Jeff Stoutland. We don't have that ability to groom those type of guys and become the best offensive line for 5 years running or whatever it is. So I think the media is kind of leaning on the past of the Cowboys, but also understanding healthy, this is an offensive line that you should be able to get the job done with. Here, the thing is, as Cowboy fans, we know our offensive line. We know you can't rely on the Tyron Smith to be healthy. So we are nervous about what happens when he goes down. Do we play the musical chairs? Also, we were playing a ton of music. That's the other thing. The Connor Williams, the Connor McGoverns, the early Tyler Biadishes, they were talking about the Cowboys having one of the best offensive lines 2-3 years ago, which was false. And this was when Tyron was barely playing, McGovern and Connor, and now we're doing all this swapping in and out with Philbin. I don't want to see all that. And that's kind of why I want to see them decide to stick with Tyler Smith at one position this year, and then we'll revisit this next year. But that's going to take guys like a Waletzko to take a massive second-year jump. Schiff said, is a drop from top 5 O-lines that great to everyone else? Usually, depending on the youth or the contracts, usually if you have a top 5 offensive line, it'll go for a few years, right? But then you'll see a team like the Titans where injuries came into play and contracts, they cut people and things like that. Now they're kind of rebuilding up there. Or you'll see a team like the Chiefs where they had a respectable offensive line, but realized right away age caught up to them. And they said, well, we've got one of the best quarterbacks ever in the world, but that doesn't mean we stop protecting him. So they went out, traded for Orlando Brown, signed a Joe Tooney, drafted, who was it? Not Humphrey. Yeah, Creed Humphrey in the second round. They kept loading up offensively on the offensive line, not always in the draft, but through free agency and the draft. So, it is a drastic drop, right? If you don't replenish it. But if you're like the Chiefs, where they saw their drop off due to injuries, they said, no, sir. We went out there. And if you're like the Eagles quite literally have been drafting replacements and they've been putting them at different positions. Dickerson, I think, was supposed to be the center replacement. He's a Pro Bowl guard. They just drafted another dude this year in the second round, was going to probably replace one of those guys up front. And I want to say there's one more dude they drafted to replace Jason Kelce at some damn point whenever he decides to retire. So, and all these dudes are drafted mostly in the second or third round, though. So, who ranked it? Yeah, Iceberg Q, they wildin'. They ranked the 2021 Cowboys O-line the best. Is wild to me. Wow. We'll see about Alec Lindstrom. Right now, he's not the backup center, Danny. Right now, that is Matt Forniak, who is apparently has a strong grip on that. We'll see. It's weird, though, that you're this big Alec Lindstrom fan. I thought you were not big on smaller guys that can get pushed around, because Alec Lindstrom is a smaller guy, right? So we'll see about his offseason peanut butter, too, because he's 300 pounds soaking wet. So he's got to put on some weight and some strength. Where Matt Willett or Forniak is like, he's a tall center too, like 6'6", something like that. I think he goes over 310, 315. So we'll see. Let's get to our guy Marcus to end the show. What's good, Marcus?
Yo, Scott, what's going on, my friend?
What's happening with you?
Hey, I'm big. How you doing?
Had a good weekend, man. A good little break, but excited to talk ball with y'all.
Yeah. Me too, man. Me too, always. Like I said when at the draft when we were all freaking out about the tight end getting drafted. This season for me, at least, I know we all in win now mode. We've been in win now mode for 30 years. You gonna tell the truth, but again, for me, this was always going to be about what kind of offense were we going to build? What kind of identity were we going to have? Everybody's been kind of gravitating toward that point with all their different takes and whatnot. So anything we're talking about with the offensive line is going to start with what Mike Solari is able to coach those guys up into and what Brian Shaw-Timers can put in place in terms of offensive scheme. Yeah. It's cute, for the OTAs. They got the Texas coach thing. That's cute. That's a buy-in thing for me as much as anything else. But my own personal thing is that I think if you're going to start doing anything like you pointed out with Solari too, where they're going to start to figure out who's going to be able to do what on the offensive line, they're going to have to focus on running the football. That's the best way to get offensive linemen when you're developing them. particularly at this league, at this level, the best way to get them up to speed is to get them doing what they really want to do, tied that big. They just want to put a hat on somebody, except Josh Ball. Josh Ball want to get out the way. But you want to get them.
To be fair with Josh Ball, when it comes to run blocking, he seems to want to get nasty with that.
If we don't even take him to camp, ain't nobody gonna care.
Not at all.
If he don't even, ain't nobody gonna care.
Not one.
But my point is, you focus on getting the line working as a unit, like you pointed out. You kind of want to get some guys playing in the spot and leave them there, and then revisit another time, or make emergency adjustments when you have to. But hey, man, start it by running the football and getting your linemen, up to speed. We keep talking about off-season peanut butter and stuff like that, and that does help. But you bring those guys along by getting them working together and getting them moving people around, whether it's a zone scheme, whether it's a wham box scheme or a combination. Most people are running that are really good at running. They're running some kind of outside zone scheme or some variation.
Gotta have some type of zone. Yeah, 2023, you gotta have some type of zone incorporated. And which, look, we saw some of that, but again, it was never that we didn't have certain run plays or schemes that worked from a week to week. It's just that we did not run them consistently enough. And let me just, I don't mean to turn this subject upside down real quick, but I had put out a audio. I don't know. We was kind of reminiscing, late night hype. We were talking about the late night hype. I don't know if you remember that, Marcus. But we had,
I remember.
Who was it? We had Lucky Whitehead on, and I pulled. Well, that was a funny ass show. That one right there.
Yeah. That's why I'm laughing.
That was a wild show.
Go ahead.
But I pulled an audio clip from Lucky Whitehead. So Lucky Whitehead, we were talking about Scott Linehan, and he called Scott Linehan scary, and he said that Scott Linehan just. We would run something, it would work, and he would just never run it again, or he would wait so long to run it. And I'm like, man, how did I stumble across?
Who that sound like?
Exactly.
Yeah, who does that sound like? Who does that sound like?
I said, bruh, I literally said that in the tweet. I said, who does this sound like that took over for Scott Linehan? Kellen Moore.
Exactly. Exactly. He can't. Yeah. As much as we rag on Kellen Moore. At the end of the day, he only learned what he learned from who he learned it from.
Right. He added his own razzle dazzle to it. But I say all that to say, we've come on here on Tape Tuesdays. We've broken down Drive to the Games, and we've been like, hey, look, this is a fantastic call. This is a fantastic series. This design is awesome. Let's see it next week. I would even put in my notes down there. Hopefully we run this back. Never see it again.
Never see it again. Out coach Bill Belichick up there in that New England game before Dak got hurt. Down the stretch when the game was on the line, I never thought I would have seen. You would have thought Kellen Moore turned the corner.
I did think that. If you go watch my Drive of the Game video, I'm sitting here like, hey man, Wiz Kid's out coach. Wiz Kid out coach. Not Brian Shadow, but out coach Bill Belichick. And here we go, right? And then. Denver happened, and then the league started. It wasn't just Denver, by the way, because at the same time this was happening in Dallas, it was happening in KansasIty. Kansas City was going through a very similar thing. The difference.
Exactly.
You want to know the difference?
Andy Reid. Andy Reid got sense. Andy Reid got sense. You know it's Andy Reid. Andy Reid's kind of that. I love Andy Reid because Andy Reid had to outgrow that. He's what Kellen Moore used to be. Andy Reid would call whatever he wanted to call. Gotcha. He was just that. He was a mad scientist, offensive coordinator too. But once he started winning, and he learned how to win, learned how to be patient, and learned how to pick his spot, and don't freak out, don't panic, or in another sense, don't be so arrogant that you're just going to do whatever you want to do, regardless of how you're being defended. That's when you start to win.
Bro.
It's when you can acknowledge. That I need to do what's working in this moment.
One more tweet.
My other stuff.
One more tweet that I saw that exemplifies this perfectly. There's this crazy stat. I gotta find it here. Where is it at? Here we go. There was this crazy stat that Warren Sharp put out yesterday. The average length of Patrick Mahomes' touchdown passes in 2019, 17 air yards. In 2020, 13. Right. And the last two seasons, that shit was cut almost completely out. 8 air yards in 2021, 8.5. And in 2022, 4.5 air yards. Bro had 41 touchdowns last year. His average length of a touchdown was 4 yards. That, in my opinion, is twofold. You had teams playing more shell, right? But you also, in my opinion, had Andy Reid adapt to how teams were playing them.
Exactly. But Andy Reid has, what does he have over there? He has a classic West Coast scheme.
Yes.
They work underneath. West Coast is designed to take advantage of the fact that you're not going to let people score a touchdown with a big play. That's the essence of that. But when we talk about an extended running game with a West Coast scheme, they're gonna take 5 yards at a time,
right?
Because that's what you conceded. That's conceptual.
Yes.
Again, I'm not gonna get too far off with that because, like I say, Scott, you're the man. You know, you've been saying this stuff for a minute as far as how we're going about things. I'm gonna get out the way and just say, hey, look, whatever we need from the offensive line has got to start from the philosophy and then from the O-line coach. One thing New England used to do real good, and I'll let you go, and Belichick used to take advantage of it, was they had such great position coaches there. Belichick could tear up his game plan in the middle of a quarter and do something entirely different because his position coaches were so good. If he wanted to say, hey, look, we're going to sit down and run the football, he would just go tell them, hey, look, we're going to sit down. And the position coaches would, and that's why they would always say they would coach the team based on the opponent they were facing. And people used to say all the time they never knew what they were going to get out of New England, even with Tom Brady standing over there.
Yeah.
Because they were coached so well, and that's my whole point. I want Solari to coach up the offensive line. We'll figure out who plays where. My own preference with Tyron Smith is that he play guard, but we'll see what that shakes out, man. Let me let you go, Sky. And good stuff, brother, as always.
Thank you, man.
And love talking to you, man. And I'll holler.
Appreciate you, Marcus. Yeah, good call here from Marcus. And I just had to bring up some of these numbers and recall the LNH clip because it fits. It all fits here. But yeah, he brought up the assistants and the coordinators. That's the thing about over there in Bill Belichick. He had some fantastic assistants and coordinators that were great underneath him. When they left him, not so much. His coaching tree is extensive from job opportunities, but from a success standpoint, Romeo Cornell's and those guys, it just didn't work out. But when they were with Bill, again, that's why I think philosophy is being on the same page is so critical. Because, and obviously having players too, but I think this season, right? I think we got the players to execute what we want to execute. But when you don't always have the horses, can you make up for that? And you could be on one side of the fence or the other when it comes to the O-line coach and Joe Philbin. He did some good things, but he also was questionable. We'll see if Solari can replace that. You could be on one side of the fence with Kellen Moore. Did some good things, but was a lot of the times questionable. We'll see if Schottenheimer and McCarthy can replace that. But these are guys that are on the same page. These are guys that have the experience in those moments. Let's just be real. A lot of things were being learned on the job from that trio, McCarthy, Kellen, and Philbin, because they didn't have that cohesion and there was obviously philosophical differences. We scoff over that, or fans of this team that don't like this team or like certain players on this team or what they do. They scoff over McCarthy saying philosophical differences. Think about this. Your franchise hired a guy to run a specific side of the team that he'd been doing for 30 years. Said you can't do it. Kept a guy with a totally different philosophy and said make it work. What business operates like that and succeeds? So we finally get a chance to let the guy they hired run his ship from top to bottom, and we'll see what happens. There will be growing pains. There will probably be growing pains on this offensive line amongst some of these offensive tackles, right? The young bucks, the Bosticks, Richards, Waletzko's, Ball, and there may be some growing pains with Terence coming back from the ACL. But give me this staff, this lineup, this hierarchy, this order over the previous. I don't give a damn. Number one. We was number one offense with Scott Linehan, with Jason Garrett. People forget that. The mainstream, I should say. I just heard Colin, and look, I know technically I work for Colin as well, but I heard Colin Cowherd say, the Cowboys, this is what he said, and I don't like to do this on my show. I know I don't do this, by the way. But he said, the Cowboys lost their great offensive coordinator, Kellen Moore. They also lost Amari Cooper. We lost Amari Cooper. That was 2 off seasons ago. I don't know why he brought up Amari Cooper as if Brandon Cooks in here. I digress. And they lost Dalton Schultz. I'm just saying, listen to this, and I'm like, what? Okay. Scott Linehan had the number one offense or whatever. Jason Garrett had the number one. That happened. You're damn about the number one offense, man. How is that coordinator performing when it gets hot? And then how does that trickle down? How is my Q? How is my line? How is my D? How does it happen when it gets hot? We know what this team can do in between all that. We've seen that quite literally since 2006. It's never been about that. It's been about finishing. One more. Let me lock this up here. 808, what's goody?
How you doing, Brother Steele?
I'm doing good, man. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well and stuff like that. How was your 4th of July, man? I hope you had a good 2 days off.
Oh, I absolutely did, man. Good 4th of July. Nice little break there through the weekend and Monday, Tuesday. Re-energized to have a strong week with you guys.
Yeah, that's good to hear, man. Now, what you've been saying about Colin and them, this is why I love your show. Man. I can always get some objectiveness, at least I can say maybe little bias. I can't say.
Yeah, I'm not going to look. At the end of the day, I'm a fan. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. I never hide that. I would never hide that. This is a team I love, and I root for it to succeed. But I don't wear rose-colored glasses every day. I'm just not doing it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I've been watching all these shows, and the funny thing I always see, it's on Get Up, First Take. Even Colin said it. All these guys bringing up how we were a high-scoring offense, and with Kellen Moore, and we're taking this big loss on losing them. I was like, most of you guys are the same people who said we're running it up on bad teams.
Facts. Come on.
You can't have both. You got to choose one or the other, but you're keeping both of them so you can insult in both ways. I was like, no, you can't do that.
Right. That's real.
That's why
that's real, man.
Listening to the worst show I can watch is what is that on the Shady McCoy one?
Bro, yeah, that they all the same. They all the same. Just Shady's just not good at his job in doing it. Like his the way he articulates his opinion is shitty. It's ass to be completely honest, and it shows honestly no respect for a sport that he played. You know what I'm saying? So he borderline disrespectful, and that's just I'm gonna leave it at that.
Yeah, no, I got you. That's all I wanted to bring up, just showing appreciation for the show, man. I love it, so I don't have to listen because I used to watch First Take and Get Up every morning. I was just like, I'm glad I got a show like this to watch where I don't have to freaking wipe the blood off my ears after hearing some of these idiots.
I appreciate that, man. It's part of a huge reason why I wanted to do what I wanted to do. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you have a good day, brother. God bless.
Thank you. You as well, man. Yep. I still tune into certain programs, but nothing has changed from years ago when I decided I wanted to do this, and this was long. This ain't just 3-4 years. This is a decade or so ago. I was like, the team that I love is not being covered the right way, especially during the Romo era, where it is almost kind of repeating itself. The Romo era was so easy to just talk about Tony Romo. That's the easy route to go. But there was so much more small things, nuanced things that were fun to talk about and dive into it. I'm like, these networks aren't going to do that. And I get it. Ratings, right? That's what they want. Ratings. I tell people all the time, look, this is what I do for a living. Oh, I'm a Cowboy fan. You're a Cowboy fan, but are you a diehard? Because if you're a diehard, my show for you. If you're casual, you ain't gonna like it, bruh. You ain't gonna like it because we're not sitting here talking about the regurgitating the same quarterback, head coach thing over and over and over again. Because I understood this a long time ago. It's all those small little things that help quarterback and the head coach get to the top of the mountain. And those little small things matter, man. Those little small things are why a lot of these other Super Bowl teams or participants are where they are. And until we understand that as a fan base, we'll just continue to be butting our heads against the wall, repeating the same thing over and over again, blaming the same person, the next person, I should say, the next one person over and over again. So I said, nah, I got to do something. I didn't think it was going to get to this scale, but it did, and I appreciate y'all. I see y'all listening to some of the, yeah, man, I'm trying to be as respectful as possible to some of these people on these networks, but it's some shitty ass takes out there. I'm gonna just be flat out. Some shitty ones. And I don't even like to bring them here. And I know people can do whole shows on their takes or what. I don't even like to do that because again, that's low hanging fruit. You know, I feel like I've been salting y'all intelligence if I'm like Sky reacting to Stephen A. Smith, Dan Orlovsky. I'm not about to be doing those shows about that. Are you kidding me? They do that all the time. I digress. Let's get to these super chats. Here we go. Where we at here? 5. Boom, bow. Shout out to Brian Gooseby. Dropped 5, or he dropped 10. I'm sorry. Just supporting the Bomb Squad.
Super chat.
Appreciate you, B, for dropping that. He dropped some fire emojis as well. Towboat Ty dropped 5 earlier.
Super chat.
And he said, if a horse ain't finished a race in 7 years, I ain't betting on it winning the Kentucky Derby. He's talking about Tyron Smith. Put Tyron at swing and Tyler and Terence as your number ones. Professor O, this is why I like Mina. It ain't got nothing to do with her not shitting on the Cowboys, but she has a ton of thought, a ton of research into her take. Even if she came on here and said, here's why I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to lose in the first round of playoffs, I can listen to her because she's going to bring some research and thought to it. I know she put in the work, not just ass and things like that. Like, come on, man, what are we doing? Kirk Cousins and Black Kirk, like, what are we doing, man? Slow hanging fruit. Black Lion drop 5. Appreciate you, B. Or
Super
Black
chat.
Lion. He said, peace, guy. Tyler Smith reminds me of young Eric Williams before his car accident. Like that comparison. Watching film, both Tyler has similar traits that EW had. For those who have been around, Eric Williams was a maniac on the field, right? Car accident happened, changed his career. Period. Just changed his career entirely. There is something to that in the sense of Tyler's a bit of a maniac on the field. You know, I think Tyler Smith has that nastiness, and we talked about this. We talked about this leading up to not leading up to the draft, coming out of the draft for Tyler Smith. Like, look, we can argue technique. We can argue hand placement. We can argue one thing you're not going to argue about. 2 things with Tyler Smith: power and nastiness. Power and nastiness. And he brought a lot of that to that offensive line, that famed offensive line in the 90s. So, I don't mind the comparison. A lot of people always say he would have been a Hall of Famer had that not happened. And there is some merit to that. There's some merit to that. I think Tyler, look, he definitely had to dominate games, the guru against Reggie and Straight. I've seen Tyler, I don't know if Vita Vea going to be a Hall of Famer or not, but, won some battles there. Tyler going to be fine. I ain't worried about Tyler. Not worried about him, man. I thought for a rookie who had 1 or 2 weeks to prep at left tackle, didn't take a snap. This is what bothered me last. Didn't take a snap at left tackle last year. These dudes are arrogant enough to think Tyron Smith was going to play all year. Okay. And then, as he's recovering from his ankle sprain, hey, dog, I know the season's a week away, but we're going to need you to play left tackle. Didn't start off fantastic because I think he got his quarterbacker, but eventually settled in. And I think he was a guy that you weren't necessarily worried about over there as the season went along. And even showed, look at that, even showed some strength inside. And when I say strength, I mean being able to play inside and adding that to his resume. So, man, Tyler going to be fine, man. Tyler going to be fine. All right, y'all. Good talk today. I knew the offensive line talk would be a good one. Eventually, we'll circle back to the interior probably when I come back from the break. I believe tomorrow I'm going to switch things up a bit. I got a cool little segment, or call it show, whatever you want to call it, for tomorrow. Just, you know how I am, man. I don't like to sit on my hands. I try to switch things up and have a good time when we do these shows. And we're in a dead period, so I'm gonna switch it up tomorrow, and then Friday, we'll see. Maybe we'll end it on just a fan Friday. Maybe get some questions in, or maybe we'll revisit the state of the unit. I got another unit that I want to talk about that revolves around the trenches as well. So make sure y'all come on back tomorrow. Mo is out all of this week, as I stated last week. So there will be no primetime show for Mauricio, but he should be back the following week. For Mo. All right. And then where we at here? 21 days? About 21 days roughly. Training camp. Look to see a lot of the creators down there, content creators, covering the team. And if you see us, when I say us, I mean me and Vach, but if you see all of us, make sure you come through. Holla at us. Love chatting it up with y'all, man. Love chatting it up. That's right, Professor O. State of the unit, long snapper. All right, man. Press this button. Get up out of here. Good stuff today. Really, really good talk. Come on. Big E? Man, usually when people have neck injuries in wrestling, somehow, some way they find their way back. But this one sounded legit for Big E. Hope it get better. Let me talk to you. It did my boy LA Knight dirty, but it's cool. I'm actually not that upset with the result of MITB, but maybe I'll talk about that with y'all on Twitter. We out of here. Love y'all. Peace. Collab shows during camp? Likely. Shoot, we're actually trying to set up some collab shows with .com, so stay tuned to that. How dope would that be? End up seeing me and Vach on .com for an episode. Brian Broadus, Bobby Bell. We're in talks. We're going to see what's up.
Bomb Squad!